Mara walked through the empty wasteland with slow steps, trying her best not to cry again. Her face was covered in dry dust, and her clothes were torn from the strong sandstorm that had separated her from her group. She kept looking around, hoping to see someone, but there was only silence, broken towers, and endless dry land. The sun was too bright, and the wind carried a faint, sharp whistle that made her feel even more alone. She wrapped her arms around herself, wishing she had something warm or someone to talk to, or even a small sign that she was not the only living being in this dead place. The ground under her feet was cracked like broken glass. Old metal structures stood half buried in the sand, their sides rusted and bent. Whenever the wind blew, they creaked softly, sounding almost like voices whispering in the distance. Mara tried not to think about it. She kept walking toward the shadow of a giant fallen tower, hoping it would give her a bit of shade. Her throat was dry and her legs felt weak. She had not eaten anything since the storm and she was starting to feel dizzy. As she reached the tower, she stopped. Something felt strange. The air was heavier here, like something was watching her. She looked around carefully, her eyes moving from one ruined structure to another. Nothing moved, but she still felt the sensation, like a large presence was nearby, hidden but close. She took a deep breath and stepped forward slowly, trying to calm her heartbeat. Then she heard it, a deep, rumbling sound that did not belong to the wind. Mara froze. The sound grew louder, like a long, tired breath coming from behind a pile of broken metal. She stepped back, her fingers shaking. She wanted to run, but she also felt too scared to move. The metal scraps shifted suddenly and she gasped. A large shadow rose slowly, stretching like something heavy had been resting there for a long time. First she saw claws, then scales, then wings, huge, cracked wings that dragged across the sand like torn fabric. A dragon. Mara stumbled backward, falling to the ground. Her heart raced so fast she thought her chest would burst. She had heard stories about dragons, dangerous creatures, powerful and wild. She never thought she would see one in real life, especially not here where almost nothing survived. The dragon lifted its head and looked at her. Its eyes were bright yet tired, glowing faintly through the dust. It did not roar. It only breathed heavily, as if each breath took a great effort. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Mara slowly pushed herself up, keeping her hands near the ground in case she needed to run. The dragon tilted its head slightly, studying her. She noticed deep cuts near its neck and dried blood on its wings. One wing seemed bent at a strange angle, and the scales along its back had patches missing. This dragon was not strong. This dragon was hurting. The thought made her breathe a little easier, but she was still afraid. The dragon let out a low sound, not angry, not loud, more like a tired sigh. It rested its head on the sand again, its body sinking a little as though it had no strength left. Mara swallowed hard. She felt tiny next to it, like a small leaf facing a storm. But she also felt something else, a strange sadness in her chest. She knew what it felt like to be alone. She knew what it felt like to be lost and scared. She took one careful step forward. The dragon's eyes shifted to her again, following her every move. Mara raised her hands to show she was not holding anything dangerous. Her voice was soft and shaky when she spoke, but she tried anyway. "I'm not here to hurt you," she whispered. The dragon blinked slowly, as if trying to understand her words. Mara wasn't sure if dragons understood human speech. Maybe they understood tone. Maybe they understood fear. Or maybe they understood kindness even in simple forms. She stepped closer, but not too close. She kept a safe distance, watching the dragon and its wounded wings. The wind blew again, carrying sand across the ground. The dragon flinched slightly, as if the moving sand irritated the open wounds on its body. Mara felt something inside her shift. She had been alone for too long. She needed help to survive this wasteland. And this dragon, this huge creature, needed help too. Neither of them had anyone else. She reached into her small pack and pulled out her one remaining water pod. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. She held it up with both hands, hoping the dragon would understand what she was offering. The dragon watched her closely, its nostrils flaring slightly as it smelled the water. For a moment, Mara wondered if this was a mistake. Offering water to something so powerful felt like placing her life in its hands. But she could not ignore the thinking in her heart. Helping someone else, even a dragon, felt right. She took one more step forward and set the water pod on the sand. Then she quickly stepped back. The dragon stared at the pod for a few silent seconds. Mara held her breath. Finally, the dragon lowered its head slowly, painfully, and nudged the pod with its snout. A small, weak sound escaped it, a sound of relief. It drank from the pod carefully, as if afraid to break it. Mara watched, her eyes widening. The dragon was accepting her help. A small spark of hope warmed her chest. The wasteland still felt huge and dangerous, but now she was not sure she was truly alone anymore. And she did not know it yet, but this moment, this first step toward trust, would change both their lives forever. Mara stayed very still after the dragon drank from the water pod. She did not want to scare him or make him think she wanted something from him. The dragon lifted his head slowly, a few drops of water sliding down his jaw and falling onto the sand. For a moment he just looked at her, not with anger, not with threat, but with something tired and confused, as if he did not understand why she had helped him. Mara tried to give a small smile, even though her hands were still shaking. The wind picked up again, sending dust across the open ground. Mara raised her arm to shield her eyes. The dragon lowered his head too, the sand irritating the wounds on his neck. She could see how much pain he was in. The cuts looked deep, the scales around them missing or broken. His wings were worse. One wing hung lower than the other, and the thin skin of it had tears that fluttered like old cloth in the wind. Mara knew she could not heal a dragon. She only had a few simple supplies in her pack. But she could not walk away either. Not after she saw how he struggled to move. The dragon made a soft sound, a deep rumble in his chest. Mara wasn't sure if it was a warning or a question. She slowly reached into her pack and pulled out the small roll of cloth bandages she had left. They were not meant for creatures this big, but they were better than nothing. When she lifted them to show him, the dragon stared at the bandages, then at her, his bright eyes narrowing with confusion. "I can try to help," she said softly. "If you let me." The dragon lifted his head a little, watching her closely. Mara stayed low and moved slowly, making sure he could see every step. She approached his side where the cuts were the worst. Her heart pounded in her chest. She kept thinking about how easy it would be for him to hurt her, even without meaning to. One wrong move, one sudden reaction, and she would be gone. But something inside her felt steady. He had not harmed her yet. And she believed he would not harm her now. She reached the dragon's side and gently touched the edge of one torn scale. The dragon tensed immediately, a deep growl vibrating through his body. Mara froze. "It's okay," she whispered. "I just want to help." The growl faded, but the dragon's muscles stayed tight. He was afraid of pain. She understood that. She continued carefully, cleaning the area with her small cloth, even though the wound was much larger than her hand. The dragon let out a quiet breath, deeper this time, almost like he was trying to relax. Mara worked slowly, wrapping the bandage around a part of the torn skin. It was not perfect and barely covered the injury, but it was a start. As she worked, Mara felt the dragon watching her the whole time. Every breath she took, every slight movement she made, he followed with his eyes. She understood why. He had no reason to trust humans, and she had no proof she would not hurt him. This moment was strange and delicate, like a thin thread that could break at any second. Suddenly, a sharp electronic sound echoed in the distance. Mara jerked her head up. The dragon's ears twitched and he raised his head too, sniffing the air. The sound came again, a rapid clicking noise, then a metallic creak. Mara knew that noise. She had heard it before when traveling with her group. Mechanical creatures roamed the wasteland at night. They did not think, they did not feel, and they did not care who or what they attacked. They moved toward heat, sound, and movement. One of them was close. Mara's heartbeat raced. She looked around quickly, searching the horizon. Then she saw it climbing over a pile of broken metal, the tall, thin shape of a metal hunter. Its long legs clicked sharply as it scanned the area with a glowing red sensor on its head. The mechanical creature jerked from side to side, searching for life. Mara crouched low and pressed her back against the dragon's side. The dragon lowered his wings slowly, covering her like a shield. The torn wings still hurt him, she could see that in the tightness of his jaw, but he still moved it to protect her. The gesture shocked her. This huge, powerful creature was trying to hide her from danger. The metal hunter turned its head toward the movement. It made a sharp mechanical chirp and began moving forward. Mara held her breath. The dragon's body tensed like a bowstring. He did not have the strength to fight. She knew it. He knew it. But he still positioned himself between her and the creature. The metal hunter leaped down from the metal pile, landing hard on the cracked ground. Its legs unfolded, and it crawled in a low, fast motion directly toward them. Mara pressed closer against the dragon, her heart pounding in her ears. She wanted to run, but she could not leave him, not after he tried to protect her. The hunter came closer, its red sensor scanning rapidly. It made a sharp sound, a signal that meant it had found a target. Mara closed her eyes, preparing for the worst. Then a sudden burst of fire erupted from the dragon's mouth, not strong, not bright, but enough to force the creature back. The hunter jerked, its metal frame sizzling, and stumbled onto its side. It regained its balance quickly, but the dragon's fire had left a glowing mark on it. Before the hunter could rush forward again, a strong gust of wind blew across the wasteland, kicking up thick clouds of dust. The storm was returning. The hunter turned sharply and ran away, its sensors unable to see through the sand. Mara opened her eyes slowly. The dragon collapsed weakly onto the ground, exhausted from the fire. He forced himself to breathe. She reached out and touched his warm scales gently. "You saved me," she whispered. The dragon lifted his head slightly. His eyes were softer now, calmer. He did not roar. He did not threaten her. He simply watched her with a tired, almost peaceful expression. For the first time since she arrived in the wasteland, Mara did not feel alone. She sat beside the dragon, close enough to feel his warm breath. The wind blew around them, carrying the sounds of the storm, but she did not feel the same fear as before. The dangerous meeting that should have ended in fear had instead created a fragile connection, one that neither of them expected. And deep in her heart, Mara felt that this was only the beginning. Mara woke the next morning feeling sore and stiff, but for the first time in days she felt something close to hope. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the wasteland quiet again. The air smelled dry, but the sky was clear, and the sun was soft instead of harsh. She pushed herself up slowly and looked at the dragon resting beside her. His eyes were half open, watching her carefully as if he had been awake long before she was. The dragon still looked weak. His wings trembled slightly when he tried to move them, and the bandages she had placed the day before were barely holding together. But he was alive. He was breathing. And he had protected her, even with his tired body. Mara felt a warm feeling in her chest when she remembered how he had used his broken wing to shield her from the metal hunter. She stood and dusted the sand off her clothes. "Good morning," she said softly, even though she did not know if dragons understood words. The dragon let out a gentle rumble, not loud, not frightening, just a sound that made her think he was answering her in his own way. Mara knew they could not stay where they were. More mechanical hunters could appear at any time. They needed to move, but the dragon was still too weak to fly or even walk far. She glanced around the wasteland, her eyes stopping on a cluster of half-ruined buildings in the distance. They looked old but strong enough to offer shelter. She pointed toward them. "Maybe we can go there," she said. The dragon lifted his head and looked at the ruins. His wings twitched as if he wanted to fly, but he lowered them again with a soft grunt. Flying was impossible for him now. Mara stepped closer, her heart beating faster. She reached for him slowly and placed her hand on his warm scales, feeling a small vibration under her palm. He did not pull away. He let her touch him. "We can go together," she whispered. "I'll help you walk." The dragon blinked once, slowly as if giving permission. Their journey to the ruins was not easy. The dragon pushed himself up with effort, sand falling from his wings as he moved. Mara walked beside him, guiding him carefully. He leaned on his stronger wing at times, using it like a massive crutch, while Mara stayed near his neck, ready to steady him if he slipped. Several times he had to stop to catch his breath, his sides rising and falling with heavy effort. But he kept trying. And she kept supporting him. When they finally reached the ruined buildings, Mara felt relief wash over her. The structures were old shelters from long ago, low metal walls with parts still standing. She found a space where half the roof remained, enough to keep out the worst of the wind. The dragon lowered himself onto the ground, letting out a long, tired sigh. Mara set down her small pack and immediately began searching the area for anything useful. She found broken storage boxes, pieces of old fabric, small metal tools, and even a cracked water filter that still worked well enough to collect a small amount of drinkable water. She brought it all back to the dragon. He watched her move around, his eyes following her like he was trying to understand what she was doing. "I'm trying to help," she said with a smile. "We both need to stay alive, right?" The dragon's tail moved slightly, just a faint motion, but it looked almost like agreement. Mara cleaned his wounds again, using fresh pieces of fabric she had found. The cuts looked a little less angry now, and the dragon did not flinch as much when she touched them. He even lowered his head gently, allowing her to reach the deeper scratches on his neck. Every small sign of trust made her heart feel lighter. They spent the afternoon exploring the ruins together. Mara led the way, and while the dragon stayed close to the shelter, he lifted his head and sniffed the air whenever she walked too far. It felt as though he was watching over her, even though he was still recovering. She found a cluster of dried plants growing between the metal cracks. When she brought some back to the dragon, he sniffed them, nudged them, and then pushed a few toward her with his snout. She blinked. "For me?" He nodded, an actual small nod that surprised her. She laughed softly. "Thank you." Was strange. Hours ago she had feared him. Now their small exchange felt natural, almost peaceful. As the sun began to sink, Mara sat beside the dragon. His body gave off warmth that kept her comfortable in the cooling wind. She leaned back against his side, feeling his steady breathing. He did not move her away. Instead, he shifted slightly to make space for her, as if he wanted her there. A small sound echoed in the distance, like metal tapping against metal. Mara tensed immediately. She turned her head toward the sound, but it faded quickly. Maybe it was only a loose panel shifting in the wind, or maybe another machine was far away. The dragon lifted his head too, his eyes alert. Even weakened, he was ready to protect her again. "You hear it too," Mara whispered. The dragon lowered his head again but kept his eyes open. Mara knew the wasteland was still dangerous, but she felt safer with him than she had felt with any human in a long time. Night settled slowly. Mara shared her small blanket by spreading it under her and leaning against the dragon's warm side. She felt his breath against her shoulder, slow and calm. She looked up at the stars, bright and clear in the open sky. The wasteland felt less empty now. "You're not as scary as you look," she said quietly. The dragon blew a soft puff of warm air at her hair, making her laugh. In the ruins of a broken world, surrounded by danger and silence, a bond was growing, slow, careful, and unexpected. Mara did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing with certainty. She was no longer walking this wasteland alone. The morning sun rose over the ruins, casting long shadows across the cracked ground. Mara stretched, feeling the stiff muscles in her legs, but she felt stronger than the day before. The dragon, Arcaris, stirred beside her, shifting his weight on the sand. His wings were healing slowly, but they were still bent and weak. Mara reached out and touched his side gently. "Ready to move today?" she asked softly. Arcaris rumbled in reply, lowering his head slightly as if agreeing. They left the ruins carefully, moving toward a larger area of broken buildings that might give more protection if danger appeared. Mara led the way, her small eyes scanning for any sign of threat. Arcaris followed, walking slowly but steadily, keeping his body between her and the open wasteland. The bond between them had grown since the storm and the first dangerous meeting, but Mara knew the wasteland was still full of danger. Suddenly, a low hum echoed across the ruins. Mara froze, her heart skipping a beat. Arcaris lifted his head, nostrils flaring, eyes scanning the horizon. She followed his gaze and saw it, shiny lights moving across the sky, fast and steady. At first she thought it might be a storm, but the lights moved too precisely, too fast. The realization hit her. "They're coming," she whispered. Arcaris growled softly, the sound low in his chest. Mara knew this time it was different. These were not machines wandering blindly. These were patrol ships, human soldiers in search of dragons. They would see Arcaris and attack. Mara's heart pounded in her chest. She had to protect him. She ran closer to Arcaris, keeping low. "We have to hide," she said urgently. She pointed toward a cluster of fallen towers. "Over there. Quick." Arcaris moved slowly, each step careful. His wings itched, wanting to lift, but the damage was still too great. Mara guided him, keeping her hands on his side, helping him balance. The patrol ships hovered above, sensors scanning for movement. Mara could see the red light sweeping across the ruins, touching metal, sand, and cracks of ground. She swallowed her fear, focusing on keeping Arcaris safe. One of the patrols landed on the ground nearby. The hum of their engines was deafening. Mara ducked behind the dragon's wing as it rose slightly, trying to shield her. The soldiers were armed with bright energy rifles, scanning for heat and motion. The moment they saw Arcaris, their expressions changed. Fear, excitement, and the instinct to attack filled their faces. Mara stepped out from behind the dragon, raising her hands high. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice trembling but loud. The soldiers paused, unsure. "He saved me," she cried. "He's not dangerous." Arcaris's massive head lowered slightly as if listening to her words. His eyes scanned the patrol cautiously, watching their every move. Mara realized she had to convince them. She ran forward a few steps, making herself fully visible to the patrol, but staying close to the dragon. Her heart hammered. One wrong move from any of them or a sudden reaction from him, and they could all be in danger. A sudden sound cut through the tension, a deep vibration beneath the ground. Mara's eyes widened. The sand quake, she yelled. The wasteland shook violently, sending dust and debris flying. A nearby tower began to topple. Mara screamed, ducking down behind Arcaris, holding onto his scales for support. The dragon reacted immediately, spreading his body to shield her from falling metal and debris. The patrol soldiers staggered, some falling to the ground. Mara held tightly to Arcaris, feeling the warmth and strength of his body despite the pain he still carried. For the first time she saw him not as a monster but as a protector. He was risking his healing for her safety. The toppling tower crashed to the ground near the patrol, sending a cloud of dust and sparks into the air. The soldiers scrambled back, realizing that the dragon was not just huge but fast and smart. Mara shouted again, pointing at the dragon. He saved me. See what he's doing? He's protecting us. Arcaris made a low rumble, almost a growl, but it was steady, calm, and controlled. He nudged Mara gently with his snout, reminding her to stay low. Then, with a sudden effort, he flexed his wings and stomped forward, creating a wave of wind that knocked the nearest patrol soldiers back a few steps. The metal debris rattled across the ground, and the patrol hesitated, unsure what to do next. Mara stood a little taller. He's not our enemy, she shouted. Look. She pointed to the dragon using his massive body to shield her and the patrol from more falling debris. The soldiers' weapons lowered slightly as they observed the situation. Arcaris moved with care, not striking or attacking, only using his size and strength to protect. Slowly the patrol soldiers began to understand. Some stepped closer cautiously, keeping their rifles pointed down. One of them spoke through a comm, saying something Mara could not hear. The dragon's eyes followed every movement, watching carefully but not lashing out. His trust in Mara had taught him patience, even in the presence of humans who might hurt him. The sand settled. The ruins were quiet except for the wind. Mara stepped out fully, brushing dust from her clothes. She smiled shakily at the patrol. You see? He saved us. He doesn't want to fight. Arcaris lowered his head, folding his wings slowly. The patrol looked at him, then at Mara, then back at the dragon. Mara could see hesitation in their faces. Fear mixed with respect. They realized that the dragon's actions had been deliberate, controlled, protective. Mara took a deep breath. He's my friend, she said. And if you attack him, you'll regret it. The patrol shifted back slightly, finally lowering their weapons. Mara exhaled, her body trembling. Arcaris rumbled low in his chest, a sound that felt like relief. Mara patted his side gently. See? You saved us all, she whispered. The sun began to set behind the ruins. The patrol finally moved back, leaving Mara and Arcaris alone. He lowered himself to the ground fully, exhausted but calm. Mara knelt beside him, brushing dust from his scales. She felt his warmth against her, steady and strong, and she knew they had survived not just by luck, but because of the bond between them. The threat from above had tested them both. Mara had proven her courage, and Arcaris had shown his loyalty. In the quiet of the wasteland, as stars began to appear overhead, they rested together, stronger than before. Mara knew now that their partnership had changed something fundamental. Not just between a human and a dragon, but for anyone who might witness what they had accomplished. The wasteland was still dangerous. Machines and storms could appear again at any time. But Mara and Arcaris had learned something more important. Together they could face it. And in that realization, a new trust had grown, ready to guide them toward the unknown future. The first light of dawn spread slowly over the wasteland, painting the cracked ground with gold and pale orange. Mara stretched, feeling the stiffness in her legs, but she felt lighter than she had in days. She looked at Arcaris, the dragon beside her. His wings, once broken and weak, had grown stronger over the past days. The torn skin had started to heal, and he moved with more confidence than before. Mara smiled softly, running her hand along his warm scales. "You're ready?" she whispered. Arcaris lifted his head and tilted it toward her. The sunlight glinted on his bright eyes, and Mara thought she could see a faint spark of excitement. She knew he felt it too, the freedom that was about to come. She reached into her small pack and pulled out a rope harness she had made to hold herself safely. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She approached him carefully, holding it out. Arcaris watched, breathing slowly, but he did not move away. He trusted her. Mara stepped onto a small rock to reach higher, then slowly climbed onto Arcaris's broad back. Her heart pounded as she held onto the harness tightly. The dragon shifted slightly to balance her weight. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Arcaris rumbled low in his chest, a sound that felt like an answer. He flexed his wings, testing the strength in them, muscles taut and shimmering in the sunlight. Then with a powerful push he lifted off the ground. The ground dropped beneath them and the wind rushed past Mara's face. Her hair whipped in every direction but she laughed, a sound of pure joy. Arcturus soared higher, climbing over the ruined towers, the dry rivers and the cracked plains. His wings stretched wide, strong and free. Every beat lifted them farther from the wasteland's dangers. Mara's small hands rested on his scales, feeling the power beneath her, but also the gentleness. He carried her carefully, protecting her even in flight. Below, the wasteland spread endlessly, dry and cracked, filled with ruins and broken metal. Mara had walked this place alone and afraid. Now she flew above it, held by a creature that had once been her greatest fear. She leaned closer to Arcturus, speaking softly. "Thank you," she said. "I would have been lost without you." Arcturus rumbled low and she felt the vibration under her hands. She did not know if he understood the words, but she knew he understood the meaning. They had shared fear, pain and now trust. She had seen his weakness and he had seen hers. They had protected each other in ways neither could have imagined. They flew over a narrow canyon where the wind howled fiercely. Arcturus tilted his wings, skimming close to the rocky walls. Mara held on tightly, feeling the thrill of the flight and the strength of the dragon beneath her. They passed over the remains of fallen machines and metal towers, some half buried in sand, others leaning precariously. Mara pointed down at a small pool of water reflecting the morning sky. Arcturus dipped slightly so she could see better. She smiled, seeing the small patches of life surviving in the wasteland, plants clinging to rocks and a few birds flying below. For hours they traveled together. Arcturus grew stronger with each beat of his wings, Mara growing braver with every moment in the sky. They passed villages in the distance, abandoned or partly destroyed, and Mara waved at the few people brave enough to watch. Some ran in fear but others stayed still, staring in awe. Mara knew they would remember this day, a human riding a dragon, safe and protected. When they finally landed in a wide valley surrounded by hills, Mara slid off Arcturus's back carefully. He lowered himself gently, folding his wings so she could step down safely. She ran her hands along his scales, brushing away dust and loose sand. "You did it," she whispered. "You're fully healed." The dragon made a soft rumbling sound, lifting his head to look at her. He had been hurt, hunted, and alone, but now he had someone who trusted him completely. Someone who had risked herself to help him. Mara felt a warm feeling in her chest as she knelt beside him. She did not feel small or weak here. She felt part of something bigger, something strong and protective. The sun began to set, casting orange and purple across the valley. Mara and Arcturus rested, looking at the horizon together. The wasteland still held danger, but it no longer seemed endless. She knew they could face storms, machines and human hunters, but together they could survive anything. She climbed back onto his back, wrapping her arms lightly around him. Arcturus spread his wings, powerful and free, and lifted off the ground once more. Mara laughed, leaning close to him as they rose into the twilight sky. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of dry earth and life returning slowly to the wasteland. They passed hills, forests and rivers that were coming back to life. Mara felt a new sense of hope. Hope that humans and dragons might learn to trust each other, to protect each other. Flying together, they were more than a girl and a dragon. They were a team, a symbol of courage and trust. The bond they had built through fear, pain, and survival had grown into something strong. Mara felt safe and free, and Arcturus, once wounded and broken, felt proud and alive again. The stars appeared above them as night fell. Mara rested her head lightly on Arcturus's neck, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. She whispered softly, "We'll face whatever comes next together." Arcturus lowered his head slightly, nudging her gently. He did not need words. Mara understood his answer. They were no longer alone. The wasteland was vast, but together they could explore it, protect each other, and perhaps even bring hope to others who feared dragons or humans. The night was quiet except for the soft sound of the wind and the flapping of wings. Below them, the valley stretched endlessly, and Mara could see the lights of distant villages twinkling in the dark. Arcturus soared higher, carrying her over the land he had once thought lost, now alive with possibility. For the first time Mara felt truly free. And Arcturus, once wounded and wary, felt a strength he had never known before. Together they flew into the new era of the wasteland, a world where dragons and humans could find trust, friendship and protection in each other. The journey was just beginning. But Mara and Arcturus were ready. No storm, no machine, no danger could break the bond they had built. With wings strong and hearts brave, they rose into the sky, leaving the wasteland behind and flying toward a future full of hope.